All advice given is for general information purposes. All legal cases are different, and you should seek the advice of your own attorney before acting or making decisions. No attorney-client privilege applies to communications on this show, and no attorney-client relationship is created by calling or writing in. Attorney Rominger practices only in Pennsylvania and maintains his primary office in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Hey, good afternoon. Carl Rominger here, live WHP 580 Studios. 540-0580. 540-0580. That's the talk line number. If you have a legal question, call in. We'll answer it here on the air. I don't know. What do you want to talk about? I always start out like that. Give you some ideas. Divorce, custody. Everybody likes alimony, right-of-ways. All those little legal issues that you always wanted to get the answer to, or one that's actually causing you concern right now. Just call in 540-0580. I'll try to field it here on the air. If we can, of course, we'll sometimes research it for you and get back to you. What else did I want to tell you guys? Well, I was hunting down in Maryland inline muzzleloader. Of course, I didn't shoot a deer, but I was out with the famous Stony Valley Outfitters, and I want to thank them for that opportunity while I have the chance. Also want to call your attention to my Facebook page. If you want to join up or just check it out, you can see exciting photos such as the New York Times here in the WHP 580 studios. It's not often that a New York Times is able to sneak its way in the door here. I'm certain that when R.J. Harris learns of this, he may become irate. But nonetheless, it's here in the studio, and I'll leave it for him for Monday morning. Jesse, you're on the air.
Yes, thanks for taking my call. I'm going to be working at a commercial job. Actually, it's going to be at a school, but it's for housing.
Okay.
And they want to do a background check. They're going to use my Social Security number, which is fine. But then they want to take my fingerprints, and I kind of have a little problem with that. Do I have to do that?
Well, if you want to work there, you do.
Okay.
And I mean, that's the problem. What they want to do is run those fingerprints against the database, I guess, if something gets flagged. The other reason, this, of course, is the more nefarious end of things, is the government just likes to have your fingerprints if they can get them, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's a sneaky way of getting my fingerprints, and I want to keep what's mine to myself.
Well, let me tell you what. I had to get my fingerprints taken in order to become a lawyer, so I was like, I guess I'm finally going to break down and let them keep my fingerprints on file somewhere. It was a prerequisite to get the law license at the time. I don't know if they still do or not, but I was as unhappy about it as you were. That's the same reason I don't like Easy Pass. I just don't want anybody knowing where I'm driving.
Yep, well, I never gave that a thought, but yeah.
Well, listen to this. I bet you don't realize it or not, but when they first put the Easy Passes in, the batteries started to fail a lot sooner than they thought they would. And at first somebody thought, well, it must be the batteries are bad, but it turns out that there's so many Easy Pass readers out there, and not just at the turnpike or the highways, but other private entities are setting up Easy Pass readers because you can use them to gather information, like how many vehicles are going by, for instance. Mm-hmm. Because if you know what percentage of vehicles have an Easy Pass in them, you can figure out how many vehicles are actually driving by. And they don't transmit; they got to get turned on, and then they transmit. So what's happening is they're getting turned on all the time. So my point is, once you give up that kind of information, it's just out there. But one of my other friends pointed out to me, he said, hey, idiot, you have this thing called a cell phone in your pocket that's pinging towers all around you all the time. So really your Easy Pass is going to be the last way they need to track you. So, I guess in this day and age, you hate to give up the biometric data, but the reality is it probably doesn't matter because there's probably a camera somewhere with a picture of your face on it that's going to be able to identify in a crowd anyhow. And I'll go back to what all the callers always yell at me on Durgan about, right? And they go, well, if you're not going to do anything wrong, who cares if the government has your fingerprints? Well, the short answer is, what if we want to get together and plan a tea party or something?
Yeah. Well, I always thought, you do a crime and then they take your fingerprints. But, I've never been arrested in my life, so why,
Good question, too, Jesse. Here in Pennsylvania, they take your fingerprints whether you're acquitted or not. So the mere fact of being charged with a crime allows them to get your fingerprints. So if the government in Pennsylvania really wants your fingerprints, all they got to do is convince some police officer to charge you with a misdemeanor or even a summary retail theft. And by law, you're going to be fingerprinted, photographed, and processed.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Well, I guess I'm going to have to let them do it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you at the end of the day, the path of least resistance in this case probably doesn't make a huge difference in the long run. But if you want to fight the system, I guess you could fight the system. But you might not have a job.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's how they get you.
Yep.
Which, let me just turn this around for one more second. Remember, that's also why we don't like the welfare state, right? Because when your bread, your butter, your medical care, your income, your housing are all dependent upon the government. It's amazing all the things they'll give you to give up just to keep what you have or what you need.
Yeah.
Well, that's a testament to the world we live in, my friend.
Yeah. Okay, well, I appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Jesse.
Yep, goodbye.
540-0580, Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions on the air. Whatever you guys want to talk about. Jesse had a good question there. You hate to give up personal identifying information, and obviously, for instance, giving out your name, date of birth, social security number is not a great idea unless you know who you're giving them to. But if you start to think about all the times you're asked to do that. It just happens again and again and again. And pretty soon, the social security number, for instance, originally, it's just a number. We're just going to use it to pay you like some money for beer and cigarettes. Now it's your personal identifier for everything you do. Rick, you're on the air.
Hey, name's Rick. I had a question about what are the laws in Pennsylvania concerning concealed carry?
Well, in Pennsylvania, the thumbnail sketch goes like this. In order to carry a handgun concealed, you have to have a permit. In order to carry a handgun open, you need not have a permit. Okay, that's rule number one. Here's the complication. You can't carry a loaded handgun in your car without a concealed carry permit, even if it's open and notorious and on your person or sitting on the seat. So if you're going to open carry, you've got to get your gun from point A to point B without having it in the car with you loaded. And there's a whole rigmarole on that. But the long and short of it is you need the sheriff to issue you a concealed carry permit, and then you can carry concealed. And we're a must-issue state, which means that the presumption is you're entitled to the permit unless the sheriff can determine that you're unfit due to a criminal record or unfit due to mental health reasons. And what that means when it comes to mental health reasons, I don't know. I've heard somebody told me one time, that the guy's bipolar. Is that enough to have a judge ultimately determine that the sheriff shouldn't let him carry a firearm? And I don't know the answer on that, but I guess the thumbnail sketch is you should be able to get a concealed carry permit as long as you don't have any criminal background. Now, when I say any criminal background, let me just remind people that can include minor misdemeanors. So if you have a misdemeanor harassment and your girlfriend was the victim and you pled guilty to it and paid a $100 fine under the Lautenberg Amendment, you can't own a firearm. If you have a second offense DUI and you have a high rate of alcohol in your system, you can't own a firearm. So those kinds of things will ban you, which are, and I know somebody's going to yell at me when I say minor crimes, because somebody's going to call up and go, Carl, DUI is not a minor crime. And I'm like, yes, I understand that. I'm not downplaying it, but I'm saying most people who've had a DUI or a second offense DUI within 10 years don't assume they're going to lose their right to own guns for life. So I'm just throwing that in. What else you want to know, Rick?
Well, my sons are carrying, and I'm concerned. I'm a retired Army officer, and we were hardly ever with loaded weapons for 30 years that I was in the Army, unless we were in combat. And I'm concerned about, A, them having them, and B, what the parameters for using it to defend yourself are.
Well, now when we get into the self-defense, it would behoove them to probably take a pistol class or a safe gun handling class that includes a self-defense component. I know the Harrisburg Hunters and Anglers, for instance, have classes where they do that. I know a lot of the other fishing game clubs in the area have classes along those lines, which will give you some idea. If you can hold through the break here, I can talk a little bit more about self-defense on the other side.
Oh, I'd love to. I appreciate your time, sir.
All right, Rick, hold on a second. 540-0580, 540-0580. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions on WHP 580. I'll see you after the break.
Let's return to Weekend Appointment with Carl Rominger on WHP 580.
540-0580. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions. Take a little side note to the news here for a second. What a time to be a dictator, right? Nobody can seem to get out of power anymore without dying. At least Gaddafi made it to, 60-something? I don't know. That's reasonable. In the old days, you could flee to South America. You could flee somewhere. Even the Chinese don't appear to be taking anybody in these days. So to all the dictators out there, just live large, have a good time, and try to realize when your world comes crashing down. Right now, I have a theory on this, too. If you're a megalomaniac, right, since you just assume that the entire world bends to your will, I don't think these guys catch on until it's too late, So probably right up until 15 minutes before they shot him, Gaddafi really thought somehow he's going to pull it off because for the last 40 years, he's been able to just bend the entire world around him. And I think that's why they never get out in time. I don't know. It's just a theory. 540-0580. Carl Rominger answers legal questions. Come on, call in, guys. Okay, Rick.
Hi.
Okay, we're talking about, yeah, you agree with me, don't you? Those megalomaniacs can't help themselves. They really actually believe, Saddam, same thing, I'm sure. Right in a rabbit hole somewhere thinking, oh, this will all pass. I'll be back in charge again soon.
Well, Schwarzenegger said that when he left being governor that it was addictive. And I bet you could get the medical guy to say, yeah, that spot in the brain where cocaine locks on. Power does, too.
Well, yeah, he thought the maid was addictive, too, though, so he may just had an addictive personality. It's hard to say. So we were talking about concealed carry and self-defense, and I'm just going to do like a real brief primer here. Basically, in Pennsylvania, the short answer is don't ever pull your weapon and use it in self-defense unless you absolutely have to. You have a duty to retreat in public. In some circumstances, we now have a castle doctrine, so if the other side shows a gun or shows a deadly weapon, they have to show it, and it has to be visible, then you can stand your ground and defend yourself without duty to retreat. But long and short of it is you can't use lethal force unless you reasonably believe that your life or somebody else's life is in jeopardy at the time. Or I say reasonably believe, under the circumstances as you perceive them, even if that's an unreasonable perception of the circumstances. So the best illustrating case is the guy from Louisiana, Japanese guy who knocks on his door, young Japanese male in the middle of the night. He pulls out his gun and shoots the guy who's just lost asking for instructions. He tells the jury, I thought he knew Kung Fu because I thought all Asian guys know Kung Fu. I thought he was screaming at me and was going to karate chop me, so I shot him. And the jury goes back and says, well, this yin-yang is that dumb that he actually believed that. And the judge says if he actually believed that, did he feel that he was in jeopardy of his life? I guess if I actually believed that, I would think that I was in jeopardy of my life. So it was a justifiable homicide because it was self-defense. On the other hand, if the jury had determined that his perception wasn't actually that he was in mortal danger, then he wouldn't have been authorized to use lethal force, and he would have been guilty of at least voluntary homicide in Pennsylvania, which carries 10 to 20. So that's the downside of using self-defense is if you use it, you're going to be charged with a host of crimes that carry a long period of time in jail.
Wow. Okay.
So
that's good to know.
The flip side is, and it's funny because you say the military doesn't carry guns. I mean, it's sort of like the massacre that had happened out at the base. With the where was that? Fort Hood,
Texas. Yeah.
The point is on that one, nobody was armed except the police officer. Now everybody thinks that all the guys are running around with their guns all the time in the Army, and of course it's not true. On the average,
they have them 90% of the time or more. They don't have ammo.
Right.
So you'll carry it for a field training exercise, but unless you're actually going to a range to shoot, they issue the ammo at the range. And the only time I ever had ammo was when we were actually in a deadly force authorized environment, and then there were all kinds of things like weapons are tight and. So, you may have known how to use it, but
right. And weapon
30 years and I never pulled the trigger on anybody, so
it's funny you say weapons tight. When I hunt, I always hunt it ready. And I always see other guys with a gun over their shoulder or, hanging it down or whatever. And I'm always like, come on, man, if you got to be ready. You got to be ready. But no, you're right. Weapons tight because that's a much safer situation. Anyhow,
yeah, I'm kind of concerned with, the popular media, like magazines and shows and so forth. Not a lot of stress on what will happen to you if you pull that thing out of your pocket.
And that's it's the problem with Hollywood 101. I mean, people they don't display death accurately. They don't display explosions accurately. They don't display anything accurate because it's not dramatically interesting. And in reality, a lot of times when people shoot somebody and the person they shot is still talking to them as they die, they later on are very traumatized by that, obviously. And we've seen that in the criminal justice system a number of times because a lot of people do think they're just going to point a gun at somebody, shoot them, they're going to fall over dead. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it doesn't go down that way. So, yeah, it's a lot worse than people realize. And I think sometimes if they accurately portrayed it, it might discourage people. But I don't know the answer, because the flip side is if they accurately portrayed it, would be pretty horrific. And I'm not sure that would be what we want on our television sets for our kids to watch either. But then again, they get on their video game, so who knows?
Yeah, it's
All right, Rick.
bad thing. Well, thanks for taking the call. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and just encourage them to take the safety classes where they have a component, where they have somebody come in for an hour and talk about the law of self-defense, because it's good to know. The other word to the wise is if they ever do shoot somebody in self-defense, don't talk to the police until your lawyer's holding your hand, literally.
Yeah.
All right, my friend.
Thanks, sir.
All right. 540-0580. Fred, you're on the air.
Hi, Carl.
Yeah.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. I was going to ask, this is about my wife, and it basically, long story short, she got stressed out at work. She developed psoriasis, and then she was put on short-term disability. So then now the company's saying that she has to go off of disability and come back to work, and the doctors are saying that she shouldn't go back to work yet. And it's an issue where if she quits her job right now, which wouldn't be an issue, but then she would lose her health insurance and stuff.
Right.
So is there any way to sort of fight that, or is it pretty much, I mean, you're done?
Is she on a private disability plan or workers' compensation?
It's like a private disability through her work.
Was she hurt at work or no?
It's just the stress caused psoriasis.
Okay, interesting. Long and short of it is she can fight that out because the contract is going to allow. I mean, it's a contract, and if she's actually disabled, they're going to have to provide it. Also, and I don't know to the extent, but she may also be entitled to a workers' compensation benefit if her disease was caused by work. So what I'd want you to do is contact me off the air, and I'm going to refer you to somebody I want you to talk to.
Okay.
All right? The best way to get me is just go to romingerlaw.com, shoot me an email from there, or just call the office and let me know you talked to me on the radio, and I will get you in touch with who I want you to talk to, because I don't know the answer, but I know who does.
Okay.
All right?
Are you available today then, or just shoot it over on Monday?
If you just go to romingerlaw.com, or my email is Carl, Karl, at Rominger, ROMINGER.com. So it's just my first name at my last name.com, or you can just hit me up on Facebook.
Okay.
All right?
Sounds good.
All right, brother. Thanks.
Good. Thanks.
540-0580. Tony. Hey, Tony.
Hello, Carl. Thanks for taking my call, and you always have a very interesting program.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes, you're welcome. And the reason I'm calling is I've made an observation, which I'm sure many people who have firearms that they carry either concealed or unconcealed have probably made the same observation. Your license to carry, if you read that thing, it used to read Pennsylvania, something to the effect, Pennsylvania license to carry concealed.
Yes.
I think it said firearm. Now it reads, these little sly devils, it reads Pennsylvania license to carry firearms. I called my county sheriff. I'm from Berks County. I called my county sheriff and I said, hey, why do you have this listed as a license to carry firearms when I can carry a firearm without this license? It should read concealed carry.
Right.
He says, your legislators did this. And I have not called my legislators, although I've talked to mine, and believe me, his attitude is he thinks as long as you don't unduly restrict someone's right for firearms, that's certainly within his right. He doesn't even know what the Pennsylvania Constitution's all about.
Article 1, Section 26.
Yeah, really. I mean, it says, I think, without question,
the right of the citizen to bear arms shall not be questioned.
That's right. And my congressman, I don't think he understands what those words mean. But back to the point is, do people realize that this is that subtle little twist that legislators or people in government, they constantly change things, and now you look at this, it's a right to carry a firearm, and you think if you're ignorant enough that you probably need a license to carry, and eventually they make you believe that you need a license, and then you lose your right to carry because you're under the impression that you can carry you can only carry when you have a license. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, listen. The greatest thing about being a government or an institution or anything that lives longer than a human being is you have time. and you can slowly manipulate things. When my law school was taken over by Penn State, I remember the theory amongst the administration was, well, some of the students are upset that Penn State took over Dickinson, but they'll graduate, and in a few years we'll have a fresh crop who will just think that's normal and be happy, and we'll just move on. And now, the flip side is institutions that survive human life have also allowed us to create vast wealth. Pharmaceutical corporations, for instance, can work on a drug for 30 years and put $1 billion, into it. So it has its ups and its downs. But government, I agree with you. I'm going to be curious about that change. I'm going to research it. All right.
Yep. Like I said, I haven't contacted my man. I guess I could contact somebody else.
Well, Tony, let's find out. I'll do a little research on that next week. Maybe if I think about it, I'll bring it up.
Okay. I think you're going to find out that the Pennsylvania legislators, they changed that, and I don't trust anybody that changes the connotation of what this license is.
Well, to change it, that's how you do it. You got incremental change. That way,
exactly.
It's like the frog in the pot. You know about the frog in the pot, right?
You got it. That's exactly what it is. Thank you very much, Carl. I'm glad I had the opportunity to discuss it with you and your listening audience.
Thank you, Tony. Take care.
Okay. See you.
Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions, 540-0580. Before I go to break, I'll give you a little quote from Oscar Wilde. It is always a silly thing to give advice, but to give good advice is fatal. So I'm alive still, so take that as you may. All right, I'll see you after the break. Welcome back. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions, 540-0580. Just spinning around in my chair. This is the same chair that Bob Durgan sits in. It's quite a chair, I'll tell you. Oh, Chris, you're on the air. What's going on, Chris? Chris? Where'd you go, brother? Oh, I don't know what happened to him. He fell asleep. Can't hear him snoring. Oh, well. Sorry, Chris. Call back in. We lost you there, brother. Got the other Chris we'll take in a minute, but Anita's next. Anita, you're up.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome.
My husband found a dog last Monday. We had the area where he found it. We had contacted the local Humane Society, the SPCA, the local township police, made phone calls in the area because my husband is familiar with the area to residents asking if they know of anybody who has lost the dog, and have even taken the dog to the vet to see if they had an ID chip embedded.
Okay.
No ID chip. So collar, but no identification whatsoever. We intend to keep the dog if no owners step forward. However, along the way, we are incurring vet bills. The dog had ticks, was in basically good shape, but we intend to keep him if nobody steps forward. And we're wondering how long we have to wait until ownership rights transfer to us of that animal.
Well, what my old property professors say, possession's 9/10 of the law, which is something you hear on the street, too. When you hear it on the street and you hear it in law school, you start to assume it must be pretty close to accurate. Here's the dealio. That dog belonged to somebody. It may still belong to somebody, but they've obviously lost it. And a dog's kind of unique because if I lose a ring or I lose a watch or I lose a shoe and somebody finds it, I guess they can take it to the local police station and put it on the shelf and see if anybody comes and claims it. And after a certain time period, just say, okay, it's yours. But I don't suspect the local police station is going to feed and water and clothe the dog or do whatever else that you have to do for a dog these days. You probably have to – I'm just going to joke about that, but because, people treat their dogs like children. But the point is there's a lot of things you have to do to maintain an animal like that, and obviously you have. I don't know when it magically transfers, when ownership transfers, but it seems like you're now the owner of the dog. Nobody's come forward, and if somebody comes forward in a year, they're definitely not going to be able to argue for the dog back, I wouldn't think. Most importantly, the dog is not of great value, I assume. It's not like a thoroughbred or whatever those things. What do you call those? AKC certified breed or something like this? Because there's obviously no paperwork on this dog, right?
Well, the dog is a beagle.
Okay.
And it's a male, and he's obviously a purebred beagle, very well behaved. So there may be. I don't know.
Okay, and again, I would think if the dog was valuable, somebody would have chipped it, collared it, or do something with it. So it's hard to believe. And the dog obviously doesn't seem like it wanted to go anywhere. I mean, it doesn't seem to know where it wanted to be in the area. Or how'd you guys pick it up?
It was running in the middle of the road.
Yeah, see?
Yep.
I did that once. I was driving down 22 up by Colonial Park area or whatever, and there was a dog in the middle of the road, and I managed to snag him out of the road. It's a long story. But he had a collar on him, so I was able to call his vet and get him back to who he belonged to. Short answer is I think it's probably your dog.
Good.
Does he hunt?
Glad. Pardon me?
Does he hunt yet?
I think he was probably intended to be a hunting dog, but we won't use him to hunt.
Well, you just loan him to me.
Okay.
All right, Anita.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate your show. I listen to you on the weekends.
Hey,
Thank
if
you
you,
so much.
and if somebody, here's what happens. If somebody calls up for the dog, maybe you can just work it out with him. I say, hey, it's my dog. Well, dude, it's been 6 months. I got $8 billion in vet bills and 400 pounds of dog food I fed the thing. So, come on, let's just call it even.
Yeah, we would prefer to keep him at this point.
Yeah, well, of course. All right, you take care.
Thank you.
540-0580. I think that one will work itself out. Robert, what's going on?
Okay, I have a place in the mountains, a trailer and a campground, right?
Okay.
And I'm thinking about selling because my wife passed away it's going on 2 years now. I kept it another year, and I thought, well, maybe I'll really want to keep it, but I'm thinking now I'm going to get rid of it. But anyways, the deal is I pay the ground rent by the year for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, if I do sell it, the person that buys it is going to have to pay from the time we finalize whatever. He's going to have to pay the ground rent for the year.
Okay.
Right? Well, I was told that.
Oops, I think I dropped him. You know what? I forgot to lock him. Oh, sorry about that. Call back in, my friend. Sorry about that. 540-0580. Dan.
Yeah, Carl.
What's going on, brother?
Hey, I got another trailer question for you.
We lost the other guy. Hopefully he calls back in. The idiot running the fen, moi, hit the wrong button.
Hey, you specialize in law, not radio.
It's true. It's true. But, you think after 2.5 years I'd be able to use the phone adequately.
This is my father. He's older. He's 80, and he owns a trailer, but he doesn't own the land. Water connection from the property. Outside of the trailer, there's a valve that's frozen, and you can't shut it off to fix it. And I called the owners, and they're brushing us off. Hey, it's his problem. And it's in Derry Township. I called the township, and everybody's like, is there any kind of, I know there's truth in renting laws and all that kind of thing, but is there anything for trailer owners? Is any suggestions to find out? Because the only way to fix this valve is to shut the whole main off for the trailer court. And that sounds really risky.
It's interesting.
It's not a do-it-yourself job, I don't think.
I just happen to have Steve Snyder floating around in the background. Steve, did you hear that question?
Yes, I sure did, Carl. How are you this morning?
Good.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I would say. You're talking about landlord-tenant law, and within the Landlord-Tenant Act, there's very, very explicit statutory law dealing with mobile home parks, or the industry calls them land lease communities. And I'm not sure whether you have a legal issue or whether you simply need some help in negotiating a resolution of the problem. It's the kind of thing that we get calls like this a lot, and we'd be pleased to help him. He's obviously not responsible for. First of all, you'd have to look at the whatever the document is for the lease of the land that the trailer's on or the mobile home's on. That should really dictate a lot of what gets handled. But I think maybe to have somebody help negotiate with the owner of the mobile home park is probably the way to go there.
That's what I thought. I'm sitting in the car waiting for somebody, and I figured I'd give a call in there.
Yeah.
All right, brother. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Carl. Bye.
Hey, no problem. 540-0580. Just happen to have Steve floating back there. I just knew that would be a good.
Yeah.
Now we're going to take Doug next. Charlie, you hold on, Charlie, because I'm going to be able to help Carol and Charlie out at the same time. But Carol Facebooked me a question that Charlie's up on the board for. But we're going to take Doug first. Doug, self-defense question. What's going on, brother?
Hey, Carl, earlier you intimated or flat out said, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but in order to justify self-defense, you have to be confronted with a weapon.
I was talking about on the street under the new Castle Doctrine for the no retreat version.
Okay. Well, my question is, does Pennsylvania law recognize the principle of disparity of force? I mean, like, I'm 62 years old, 5'8", got a bad leg, arthritis. If I'm confronted by, 22, 23-year-old thug, just the disparity in our abilities creates a life-threatening situation.
If the jury believes that you believe that, then yes.
Okay, they go on the reasonable man principle.
They go on
what you knew at the stand, what you understood at the time was reasonable.
Well, no, it's interesting. You can have an unreasonable belief, and then the only question is, then you assume that unreasonable belief was true, and then say, what would a reasonable man do? See, they made the law of self-defense so complicated. So complicated. So it's kind of like this. I thought he was a Martian here to invade the planet Earth, so I shot him. And the jury goes back, and if one of the jurors goes, I think Rominger's really thought that guy was a Martian. I mean, he's crazy as a June bug, but he really believed that guy was a Martian.
Well, it deals with Durgan all the time, so that's understandable.
and the point being is, if they believe I thought the guy was a Martian and I was defending the planet Earth from alien invaders, then I guess self-defense, defense of others applies, because it may be an unreasonable belief, but an objective person confronted with a Martian trying to take over the planet would blast them. I would think. I would hope. So.
Okay, so as I've told other friends, like you say, deadly force is the last resort, absolute last resort. And you will be charged with homicide.
Right.
You have to be able to convince the jury that you believe your life was in danger for whatever reason. There's 3 thugs there. He's got a gun, a machine gun, a grenade, whatever. You were convinced that your life was in danger.
It's whatever.
Life.
Now, if you can prove it objectively, okay, if there's a video camera that's showing some guy with an AK-47 pointed in your direction and you whack him first, I think you win that one, right? The more complicated one is when you're like, well, remember the police in New York where they're like, we saw a gun in his hand and it turned out to be a wallet?
A cell phone.
Yeah.
A wallet, a cell phone.
Exactly.
80 rounds or something.
Yeah, I know that's exactly the same case we're thinking about.
No, on the face of it, that sounds unreasonable, but the dynamics of violent encounters it's not really when you understand the dynamic.
There's a case where there's a police officer who is in jail because he failed to do. I'm trying to remember. He didn't notice something going on alongside him. I can't remember the whole story, so I'm going to leave it alone for a minute. But I'll get back to that one because it's a great example of that, where basically they're able to show that in violent encounters, what people actually see or can tell what's going on is like 20% of everything that they actually remember after the fact.
You go into the fight or flight reflex can create tunnel vision, acoustic problems. You may not hear everything.
Right.
There's a lot going on.
Right.
Are you aware of a case that Bob Durgan reported probably 10 years ago? I believe it was in York. A boy, preteen, was in the house. His mom was on the porch. He heard some shouting and a shot, and he goes out. He saw his mom laying in a pool of blood. Guy standing with a gun, and when he went out, he took a gun with him, and he shot the guy, and they were going to charge the boy with murder.
Right.
Are you aware of that case?
I vaguely remember it.
I didn't know what happened. I wondered whatever happened to the boy that they were going to charge.
Well, I had a woman one time who shot a guy in self-defense or defense of her daughter when he came to a party and attacked her. And the first shot, everybody didn't have a problem with. But after he was down on the ground, she walked up to him and plugged him 2 more times on the ground. And
that's murder.
And he survived, so it was attempted murder. But I got her house arrest for a couple months. So how's that sound? Because
that's good.
But that was the concern. Is like, why did she do that? But the answer is, and my explanation would have been at jury trial was, she didn't know. I mean, she was just an automatic pilot at that moment.
Most shooting schools teach you, and the police, they teach them keep shooting until the threat no longer exists. Well, he was still moving. He was still a threat.
That's right. All right, I got to go to break.
All right, thank you for your time, Carl.
Thank you. 540-0580, Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions on WHP 580. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. 540-0580, answering your legal questions here. Charlie, you've been waiting patiently. What's going on?
Is this Charlie? Hello?
Yeah, you're on the air, brother.
About 15 years ago, we inherited a property from our aunt, and the husband had lifetime or estate rights to the place, which he's currently renting it out. He's asked recently if he could terminate his rights to that place for some compensation.
Yeah.
Can this be done?
Yeah, absolutely. All you do is have him write a deed, basically quitting his claim to it. So, yeah, pretty simple procedure.
Okay. So he just writes a deed. In other words, he can set that he wants 10% or 20% from the proceeds of the property then.
Yeah, but then you would do a separate contract. The other way to do it is just to sell it all at one time. If you guys are going to list it, just have everybody enter into a listing agreement and do a side contract between you as to what the breakdown would be.
Okay.
It'd be very easy to do.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, my friend.
Bye.
Yeah, hopefully he's not going to just go online and try to find a form to do that, but it's a very simple thing to do. Robert.
Yeah.
You're back on. I'm sorry, I accidentally bumped you off. Can you start your story again? I got Steve Snyder with me, too, who kind of knows a lot about trailer issues, so go ahead.
Okay, I have this place in the mountains and a trailer in this trailer park or campground, and we had it for a lot of years. But anyways, I recently lost my wife. I shouldn't say it's going on 2 years now, but anyways, so I kept it another year or whatever, and then I thought, well, since I don't use it hardly no more, I'm not, But anyways, the guy, when I pay the rent for a whole year, and now, like, if I do get rid of it, I mean, if someone does buy it, once they buy it, they're going to have to pay the rent for a whole year. And, like, let's say a week after I just paid him, he said he's going to keep all the money plus get a whole year's rent from them. So it's like he's getting paid twice for 1 year.
Okay.
And is that legal?
So he's getting paid double because you're paying him extra?
No, because let's say if I sell it, he's not going. Let's say I got.
Right, you're already paid up. Well, when you sell it to somebody else, I guess you could ask for them to prepay. You got to have an agreement here, Steve. You following this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here's what you do.
Yeah.
In other words, you've already prepaid the rent for the location where the trailer is. So you simply factor that into the selling price. I mean, so as an example, if you wanted to sell the mobile home for $30,000, and you've already paid $300 for the year, you just add $300 into the price, the selling price.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean that's negotiable. You can work that out with them.
In other words, like, see, because it was paid up out there, so I couldn't say to them, well, here, it's paid up for this amount of money, but if you give me this here, you're going to be paid up for $500 more.
Yeah, you can do that.
Well, according to them there, I couldn't do that. I couldn't even say to them, hey, this is paid up until then. I'm just going to let them have the trailer, and they're paid up to them. He said you can't do that.
Well, I don't know. I'd have to see your contract with the trailer park, but I can't imagine why they want to do that. So, Robert, if you want to get hold of Steve, you might want to talk to him off the air about writing a letter on your behalf to straighten that out. But we need to see your agreement, okay?
Now, I don't know what you mean, Steve. Now, what's he, a lawyer or something?
Yeah, he's a lawyer in my office.
Call our office and we'll help you.
Uh-huh.
All right, Robert.
Well, okay.
All right. 540-0580. Mike, you're on the air.
Yeah, hi, Carl. My problem is my wife just passed away in March, and we were together like 12 years.
Okay.
But not married for 10 years.
All right. So you weren't married you only married for 2 years, not that.
Oh no, we were married like for 9, 8, something like that.
Oh, okay.
Without getting all the paperwork out, I just happened to catch your program. I've been meaning to call you for a while. But anyhow, Social Security said nothing. I got one final payment of like $150.
Because they want you to have been married for at least 10 years, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and I think that's the law.
That is the law, period, amen.
Yeah.
I see. All right, Carl. Happy hunting.
All right. Hey, thank you. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. Yeah, that 10 years is a magic number. It's the same thing with, we had, Steve, years ago, I had a case. Woman marries a guy. He dies 11 and a half months after they're married. And, of course, he's a vet, and he's going to get his military retirement. Mm-hmm. You have to be married a year. So you can get, because you can't get the military retirement as a spouse unless you've been married at least a year. And there's a theory behind that, because that was to prevent people from getting married 10 seconds before they went to the front line and passing on the benefit that way. But those rules are hard and fast and not very malleable. Let's see here. Mike, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hey, Mike.
Yes. Got divorced, agreed to pay for some horse riding lessons, paid child support.
Can you hold on, Mike? Hold on. Mike, we're going to have you hold till we get back from the break here. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions on WHP 580. If you need us during the week, just go to RomingerLaw.com. That's Rominger Law, just like it sounds. Or go to weekendappointment.com to download our free will kit. We'll be answering your legal questions live for another hour here, so tune in, 540-0580.